So we're here today to talk about lifestyle, and I'm joined by Kat Ward and Dr. Claire Gilvray. And I'm wondering if, Kat, we can start with you and just say a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Julie. My name's Kat. I'm studying a master's in children's book illustration at ARU at the moment. And I'm also working as a peer wellbeing mentor. I've personally been on a huge wellbeing journey for my mental and physical health. And I've changed a lot of kind of lifestyle factors over the years and found that different things work for me at different times and kind of finding out solutions that work best for me. So I'm really interested in kind of talking about it further.
So you've kind of said a little bit about what interests you about this subject, and I'm wondering why you feel this might be important to students or how students might benefit from a conversation like this on lifestyle.
Well, I mean, coming to university and starting university is such a huge change in lifestyle. It's people might be moving away from home, studying further afield, or having to commute and making new connections, making new friends, a whole different structure. So they're working possibly much more independently, perhaps starting to work for financial gain as well as studying. And it's just so many changes going on when you start uni and all the way through your uni life. So I think lifestyle is a huge topic of conversation.
What I'm hearing from that is lifestyle seems to be very varied and impacts lots of our activity on just being alive, maybe what we're engaged in on a day-to-day basis. Lifestyle seems really important. And I can bring in Dr. Claire Gilvray here. I wonder, Claire, if you could just say a little bit about yourself.
I am Dr. Claire Gilvray. I am a medical doctor and have been now for 25 years. And I originally trained as a psychiatrist because I was really interested in mental health and what goes on inside our brains. And then I retrained as a GP, and I've kind of worked in that space between physical and mental health since, really. And really, I'm quite passionate about helping people understand that what they do physically impacts on their mental health and vice versa. And I've recently taken on a really interesting role with Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Foundation Trust as their lifestyle medicine lead. So really trying to bring in what we do with our lifestyle into how we look after health in this area. And I guess sometimes we think about it as being like the icing on the cake. It's like the little extra stuff that we could be doing, when actually what I'm hoping we can do is change our mindset and realize it's like the basis, it's the foundations, that what we do with our lifestyle has such an impact both on our physical and mental health. It's something that hopefully we can all start to prioritise.
Wow, it feels like a huge topic, and I'm really curious to see where your conversation goes. And I'm also going to listen out for tips for myself as well, because it's quite a personal thing, isn't it, I guess? And we're all slightly different and can take something away. I might jump in every now and then if I, have a curiosity. But by and large, I'm going to sit back and listen to what you two bring here today.
I think you really hit the nail on the head there, Julie. It is such a big topic. And so I guess my initial question would be, what do we actually mean by lifestyle when we say lifestyle?
Yeah, which is a really good question, because I suspect there's a lot of people going, so what is this conversation going to be about? And I think it helps us a lot to think about the British Society of Lifestyle Medicine outlines as 6 pillars of health and 6 areas that we can look at when it comes to our lifestyle. And I'm sure as we kind of have this conversation, we'll realise how they all are enmeshed, and it's not necessarily meant to be seen as a checklist of things that we should be targeting, but more about, I guess, making sure we're kind of focusing on all the different bits of our lifestyle that we could be thinking about when it comes to our health. So there are 6 there. The first one, let's say, is movement or exercise. Not everyone likes the words exercise, but moving our body. Again, when we think about health, historically, we used to think being physically active was really good for our physical health, good for maybe our weight, good for our heart health. But actually, all the research now is really, really amazing into the world of how much impact that can have on our mental health. So thinking about being physically active or moving our body for our mental health would be pillar number 1. The second one is nutrition. So again, what we eat makes a massive difference. And again, we'll probably delve into this a little bit more, but again, not just to our physical health, but also to our mental health. Sleep, big factor. Some of these are topics that we could have whole conversations about in themselves, but Sleep, again, impacts on how we feel the next day, doesn't it? It makes us feel grumpy. It stops us from focusing well. But also we know, again, the research has started to show us about the impact that can have on our physical health as well. Social connections, or connections generally, is maybe where I would like to broaden that too. So again, when we look at psychological studies, being connected is seen as being the most protective thing for our mental health. But actually what they've likened poor connectivity or isolation to as being as detrimental to our physical health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So connection, again, is something we can maybe delve into a little bit more. Stress management is number 5. So how we manage stress, again, a lot of these things we can think of, okay, so I can think of stress and the impact that'll have on my mental health. So it will make me more anxious, it'll make me more depressed possibly, but actually we know that having chronic high cortisol is really bad for our physical health as well. And then the last thing on the list is substances. So use of things like alcohol, drugs, cigarettes. I often widen that one as well to just other behaviors that we all drop into when we're maybe tired or we're stressed or we're lonely, the things that we do that we know are detrimental for our health.
In all of the different kind of places that I've been in my life, I think finding the right communities to be in is so important, and finding kind of really good connections and people that you can really connect like authentically and honestly with. And I think when I first started the course, I was really lucky because I started as a full-time student and there was a lot of international students coming from all over the world. So everybody had to move to Cambridge. And then I actually changed to part-time, and a lot of people are commuting in. So we don't necessarily have the same kind of community based in Cambridge. It's not like everybody's here. It's, everybody's kind of coming in for the day and then going their separate ways. There's a few people definitely. But so I felt very lucky when I first moved here, because I moved from London, to actually be around people all the time and every day, and everybody was in the same boat. So everybody kind of was wanting to meet people because they didn't know anyone. And I think hearing from other students, that's not necessarily always the case at ARU. Like, I think a lot of people do kind of commute in. And so it doesn't always create that kind of really cohesive community. You might not have the opportunity and the chance to chat to people, if you're just coming in for lectures and things. And then also I kind of moved, and I'm not living in halls, but I did when I did my undergrad. And I think that's a huge one as well, because you can either, you can find a group of people that you really get on with, and you can just be so fortunate in that. But for a lot of people, like, it's going to take longer.
Absolutely. And I think my experience, certainly with my kind of university kind of degree, was actually that first term, maybe even that first year, was really difficult for some people. And actually quite a lot of people left or dropped out because they maybe didn't find that community and they felt very homesick and very kind of lost and isolated. And I guess sometimes it's easier looking back, isn't it, with sort of retrospect and kind of going, okay, so what does help us? But there is that other side of university where there is a lot of opportunity to find and explore hobbies and interests and things that maybe you didn't have opportunity for before you came away to university, that actually there is also a massive opportunity whenever we go to university to pick up hobbies and interests, ones that we've maybe had for years that we can now do with another set of people. Maybe that's an easy way of going, but actually there's other things that are going on in a university environment that would help us find that community. Because I think there's a lot to say that we are more likely to find people that we have things in common with, that we want to spend time with, that are our tribe, if we're doing things that are interesting to us.
Yeah, absolutely. I really agree. And I think it's also much easier to connect with people over something. So if you're doing a hobby or an activity, I know, for example, I love art, and I find if you're busy creating something, conversation flows so much easier because there's no pressure to kind of talk. There's no pressure to socialize. Your focus is actually on on kind of what you're doing, but it just kind of, conversation just flows much more naturally around that.
There's something to be said here about neurodiversity, and for some people, actually, that world of sort of social anxiety, where actually even you listening to this conversation might make someone feel like the pressure that they need to be going out and meeting people, when actually that's something that makes them feel very uncomfortable. And I think often for that group of people where being around people is not something that they are happy with, again, finding an activity that you're interested in can really take away that pressure, as you say. Having that kind of sense of purpose or connection to the wider world. So working on projects or getting involved in societies can really help you feel connected and less lonely without that need for it to be about social connection so much. And I think the other area that comes into this is that kind of connection to nature and being outside and actually the physical world. Again, there's so much research now, which is amazing, on the benefits we have about being out and about and breathing in fresh air and being around trees. There's the forest bathing world of research is amazing, and into the cold water world and the blue kind of or green kind of prescriptions that we can talk about when it comes to health. So I think, when we listen to this conversation, if social connection is something that makes you really, really anxious or stressed, please don't stress about it, because I think we can find that connectedness through other ways.
I think that's a really good point. I was just about to say, actually, it can be really daunting to go to especially if you're kind of feeling isolated, to then take yourself off and actually start one of these activities can be very overwhelming. It can be quite daunting. And that is one thing that I would say is, it is there as an opportunity to meet people, and people can join, I think, at any time. So it's not too late to kind of start if you haven't started it already. But then another thing which is really cool, I think, I love that the uni kind of provide this. So I'm working as a peer wellbeing mentor, and we as a team arrange hangouts. We are there and we're kind of crafting or doing some sort of art activity or colouring in or playing some sort of games. And it's just a chance for people to get together. It's really good for people who are kind of socially anxious and a bit worried about meeting people elsewhere, because you can just really turn up, just be totally yourself. There's no expectation to join in. You can join in as much or as little as you like.
And I really like that, because I think the other area that often links across from this in terms of student life is that kind of use of alcohol and substances. And often a lot of the socializing or connection is done through those sorts of activities, which for some people that's great. And that's how they meet people and how they enjoy themselves. But for other people, that can be something they know isn't particularly good for them, or they don't want to drink. And actually having a space that you can go to where alcohol isn't the headline, I think is really important for students.
I think that's really important because, yeah, you're so right. It does feel like often that becomes a big part of university experience. And if you're not drinking or you're not kind of into those kind of things, which a lot of people aren't, then you can kind of feel a little bit like out of place perhaps. But it is finding those people who just are also on the same wavelength. And yeah, it is a space where no one is drinking. So it's just nice to connect with people without any substances, I think.
I think, it is tricky because it comes back to that conversation about how we're all very unique and all very different, and about how that this kind of conversation around lifestyle medicine isn't meant to come across as a you should do this, you shouldn't do this kind of list. And it's about, again, that practice of reflecting on what is a priority for us as an individual, and what are the things that maybe even just picking one thing that is something that feels like it resonates, feels like it's important, that is at the center of this for your health. Again, in terms of just understanding how all these factors mesh together, maybe the alcohol itself isn't so much the issue, but it's the impact it's having, say, on your sleep pattern, which we know is another one of the kind of pillars here, that if we are drinking or using substances, we're not getting a good quality night's sleep. And then we know that that's going to impact on our mental health, making us more likely to have anxiety and depression. It's going to impact on how we're feeling physically and all of those things. So understanding how these all kind of link together, I think is really important.
Yeah. And you've mentioned nutrition a couple of times because that is a big one. That's on your list of pillars. Is there anything that you'd kind of want to say about nutrition?
Nutrition, I think, is a bit of a minefield. It's a tricky topic, I think, because for some people it can be quite triggering, something that not everyone's always happy to talk about, and something that I think there's a lot of possibly misinformation or information shared on social media that is from people who are maybe influencers as opposed to people who have any kind of background or training. And it's an area where that we all are kind of clamoring to kind of know what we should be doing a little bit, I think. So we are looking for that answer or quick fix when it comes to our nutrition, which, often is why we kind of, get drawn into various different diets that are out there and ways of eating that, because a couple of people have found it be helpful, then we think that must mean that it works for everybody. But I think from my experience, from my learning, from my training, I think the biggest message that comes out from nutrition is that one size does not fit all. Again, it's another one about being able to reflect on what works for you when it comes to nutrition. And I think when in terms of kind of what is healthy for us, certainly, moving away from very processed food seems like a very safe thing to say in this space. It's something that's good for all of us. So thinking about cooking our food ourselves, which is a massive thing for students if you don't have access to cooking facilities, but being able to kind of have food that is being prepared fresh as opposed to something that's come in a packet is really helpful for us. Avoiding too much in the way of sugars, I think, again, would be kind of a clear thing that goes across any of these kind of conversations about nutrition. We know that spikes in sugar are not great for our mental or physical health. And avoiding too much in the way of saturated fats, again, tends to be a kind of across the board, whatever kind of diet or nutrition plan you're following. But, I think beyond that, I think there is a big conversation that there isn't one thing that works for everybody.
I really like that message, actually, that one size doesn't fit all, because I think a lot of people out there on social media are like, this is the diet that you need to get onto. This is going to change your life. But actually, it's not necessarily the case. You really got to work out what fits you. And I know nutrition and diet has had a huge impact on me and my health. But I know the diet that I'm on is not going to be right for everybody.
I have a lot of young people that I've worked with who have actually been brought up to think about nutrition and are actually really good at looking after themselves in that space. And then others where they've kind of gone from an environment where a meal has been put in front of them up into that point where they've left home. And actually it's a whole world that they've not been educated in, and they've not been shown how they could make decisions around their nutrition. So there's massive difference, isn't there, as to what information you've had. And I also kind of think as well, where's that education come from? Like, I don't know that it's necessarily something that we're taught about in school. I think they're trying to do better. I hear some schools are kind of having those conversations a bit more. And I guess when you go into the world of food tech and things, some people are getting education around good, healthy choices around eating. But I think there can be a big gap. And, when you go to university, you can be sort of dropped in it a little bit when it comes to what nutrition is. And, it's easy to then just fall into what's the quick thing to grab, because that thought of kind of cooking something is too far removed from your experience and feels like it's something quite daunting.
I'm just thinking of these 6 pillars as well, Kat, and your own experience, your journey that you've shared a little bit of. Are there any pillars that really jumped out for you, and how did you kind of work through that to redress it?
I think it's all of them, to be honest with you. I think it really is all of them. And it's so interesting to see it in a list or hear it about it in a list, because you don't necessarily kind of identify all of these different areas. But actually, so I was really struggling with my mental health. I was really struggling with my physical health with chronic fatigue. And I had to change so much about my life in order to kind of get to a place where I would say I'm functioning and thriving so much more these days than I ever have done in the past. So I've had to kind of change most of these areas, to be honest with you. So nutrition, a diet was a huge one. Getting enough sleep and prioritizing sleep, avoiding substances. Stress is a big one. So I think keeping stress, I mean, it can be very stressful. And I've noticed that when my stress piles up in terms of like the course and kind of projects and things, then it does really affect kind of my overall well-being.
And I think that's that thing is, again, about what happens whenever we go to university and the level of stress that can bring with it. And I don't know necessarily that we always realize that until we get into that environment. You know, we're focused maybe on what our course is going to be and where we're moving to. But that kind of increase in stress can come with just even the change in environment, just maybe the stepping up and the learning around all that stuff that we've been talking about with connections and starting new relationships. It's incredibly stressful. And I think there's also that world that don't always necessarily talk about, but that world where people find themselves in courses that they're not happy with and they feel a little bit stuck and a bit trapped in that environment of something they thought that they would enjoy because they enjoyed it maybe at school, but that university course is completely different to what they expected it to be. And so there's so many different kind of layers of stress whenever we kind of go to university that, and often we feel like we're alone, don't we? I think people kind of often, particularly that kind of struggle around whether it's the right course and whether they're in the right environment, is something that we feel like we kind of have to battle with ourselves. And we can think that we're the only one with that kind of thought. But actually, most people will have that slight crisis of, am I doing the right thing? What am I doing with my future? Where is this going? When actually, I think my lesson, and you've probably got a similar kind of, having kind of gone, it's the retrospective thing again, makes it a lot easier, isn't it? Is that actually we don't need to figure that out at all. I'm certainly doing something different with my career now than what I thought I would do when I first went to university at age 18, 19. I couldn't necessarily have predicted it. So there's something here about being able to understand that what we do now doesn't necessarily dictate our future, that actually there are the people who are having the same kind of stresses that you're having, and being able to kind of go and seek out some help to have process some of that and work out who we are a little bit.
I think so, because it's a lot to decide what course you're going to do and kind of think about what's going to be right for you for the rest of your life. And it's impossible to do that because you change so much as you go along. But I don't know. I would say if you're feeling like you're not on the right course and you're really coming up against it, and you're like, you've thought it would be the right thing, but actually it's turning out not to be, because often with these things, like, how do you know until you try? Like, the only way of really knowing if it feels right is if you actually try it. So there is also the option to change. And I know a few people that have changed their course and it's worked out really well for them, because then they end up doing something that they do prefer a lot more. So I think it's good to know that the option is there, that just because you've chosen one direction doesn't mean that you have to stick to that.
Excellent. And both of you, what I'm hearing is actually you're quite skilled at doing that for yourselves out of great learning, great practice, I imagine. And I'm just thinking about our students who find that difficult to prioritise, to work out what it is, where they're stuck. So I just want to kind of plug here the coaching service that we offer from the Counselling and Wellbeing team, where any student that's feeling stuck or overwhelmed, or the vision they had when they began their degree, they've kind of lost that vision somewhere along the way, because we do that, don't we? We have a big picture for the end point, and we forget about walking the treacle in the middle. That, as a service, we're here, and the coaching service is great for this kind of work because it's solution-focused, goal-oriented, and task-oriented. So actually they can work with another person to work out what their priority pillar might be. This is huge, isn't it? The pivoting around all the topics that we've had here in the 6 pillars. We've pivoted around kind of all of them and shown how they all intertwine. And I feel like we could just keep going and talking, right till tea time. And so I'm just wondering what maybe takeaways we could give students from this conversation. Kat, do you have a takeaway?
Maybe I think it's like feeling what's right for you, like really getting in touch with yourself and working out kind of what feels right. Like, how much sleep do you think you need? What kind of foods suit you and your body? Who are the kind of the right people that make you feel energized and alive and, just safe and comfortable with? And trying to just kind of see if the things that you are actually doing, is that actually resonating with you? Is that actually creating a life that you're really enjoying? Or are you actually trying to kind of manufacture yourself into a life that doesn't fit for you?
Yeah, and I think I was going to say something about actually not feeling guilty or shame if you're not ticking the boxes and these sorts of things, that you're not quite getting it right, because nobody gets it right 100% of the time. We can't, right? Life happens, it throws us curveballs, stress happens, even if we're trying to avoid it. We'll have times when we can't sleep. I think often actually if we get stuck in feeling guilty or feeling like we failed, which is a big feeling that can come from this whole space, that we've got it wrong, that we've made bad choices, that actually it stops us then from making changes and being motivated to move forward. So I think there's something here about it being okay to get this sort of stuff wrong, and that actually there's no shame in that. There's no problem with failing.
And I want to say, just as a takeaway as well, that any students listening to this who are feeling a bit overwhelmed and stuck and not being able to work out their own priorities, is to come and have a chat to Counselling and Wellbeing Service and maybe, engage with coaching service. If you've been impacted by anything we've spoken about in this episode, please reach out to the Counselling and Wellbeing team and make the most of the support we can offer you. Visit aru.ac.uk/wellbeing to find out more about our service and how to get in touch.